As a Star Fox fan, I get asked the same question all the time. Are you okay? The answer is no. The next question I usually get asked is, hey, did you know that because of G-forces, Fox McCloud and the rest of his team had to get their legs amputated in order to pilot their R-Wings successfully? And then I smile because sometimes you have to do that in order to not scream. And then I say, well, no, actually, I did not know that because the metal leg theory is not true. It's been like this for years, guys, so I decided to make a video on it. And now we're here. Today, we're going to be talking about the Star Fox metal leg theory. We're going to be talking about the science behind it, how factual it actually is, and how I believe it became so popular. A small disclaimer before we begin. In this video, I am going to be talking about videos that other content creators have made. This is for historical context relating to this video's subject matter. Both content creators I bring up in this video are content creators whose content I do enjoy and have a lot of respect for. It probably seems silly to make this disclaimer, but for total clarity, in case someone misunderstands my words, I have no problems with the content creators mentioned in this video or the content they have made. I believe fully in creative freedom when it comes to making theories because making theories is about having fun, and discouraging fun is stinky, and we don't like that here. The only thing I ever frown at is when people treat theories like they're true and get weird at people who don't support those same theories. We're going to talk about that at the end of this video a little more in depth. Additionally, the videos that popularized this metal leg theory came out over a decade ago, and more information has come out since those videos came out. So I'm making this video to set the record straight, so to speak. Video game theories, I feel, have existed for as long as video games have. You have your old theories like Mew being under the truck in the Pokemon Gen 1 games, and the very famous L is real theory, which actually kind of ended up being true, but no one knew until like 2-ish decades later. That is still so wild to me. We might have to do a video about that. And you have your relatively newer theories like Sans being Ness. While people have made theories about games since forever and have passed them along through word of mouth, the 90s to early 2000s saw the rise of the internet. In terms of being widely used, that is. The internet has shaped society in tremendous ways. Of that, there is no doubt. The biggest change it brought was, of course, how people across the world could easily and simply connect with one another. There was an explosion of ideas and information being exchanged about a large number of topics. While people are all unique in their likes and dislikes, we all have one thing in common. We like talking about our interests, and this led to the rise of fandom spaces on the internet, specifically forums and fan-made websites. This is where not only a lot of information was exchanged between fans, but also where a lot of information was archived by fans. We didn't always have wikis for each fandom. We had to go out and make those websites ourselves. Angel Fire, Pro Boards. If those two words just sent shivers down your spine, then you are a fandom elder, and I am right there with you. Anyways, fast forward to 2005, which was the year a certain red website with an arrow in its logo was founded. YouTube's creation and rise was, in my opinion, a significant part of content creation becoming a thing. Really, back then, we didn't call it content creation. It was just fans making things based off of their passions. You couldn't even monetize any of your videos on YouTube for the first 2 years of the site's existence. Regardless, when you have this setup of people going online to talk about their special interest and create fan works for that interest, then I think it's safe to say that making videos about video games was pretty inevitable, theory videos included. Mysteries have always tugged at people since the actual dawn of time. It is human nature to theorize about the things around them in order to make sense of what they don't understand. That's why, since basically forever, we have things such as myths. People also just love debating things. They really like digging into the weeds, so to speak, of their special interests. There are a lot of notable channels on YouTube that covered video game facts and theories, but there are two significant for this video. Did You Know Gaming and The Game Theorists with MatPat. Both of these channels are very storied, and I have a lot of respect for them. I do credit them as being among the forerunners that popularized a lot of video game theories, as well as the idea of making video game theory videos. I have no idea if they were the first ones to do this. That's not really relevant to today's video. But I think we can all safely say that they were leading the pack for a large amount of time, and both still maintain very large audiences to this day. Put a little pin in that thought because we will be coming back to these channels a little bit later. Before we go any further, I think it would be best if I quickly summarize what the meta-leg theory actually is. To put it simply, the Star Fox meta-leg theory claims that none of the Star Fox members have organic legs. All of their legs were amputated at the knee or slightly below in order to help them physically withstand G-forces from the intense speeds in which they are flying at in their R-wings. Amputating their legs theoretically helps in this regard because it prevents blood from rushing from their brains to their legs, which could cause a pilot to faint while operating their ship. Obviously, that would not be ideal because pilots should probably be awake to fly their planes. Kind of important. The reason for this theory existing starts with the aesthetic of the Star Fox puppet legs from the Super Nintendo era. As you can see here, the puppets do sport legs that do appear to look rather robotic, even with a little bolt in the heel. Star Fox 2 and Star Fox 64 definitely didn't help matters at all, with the cast members wearing these metal-looking boots in those games as well, that could also pretty easily be mistaken for robot legs. The same could also be said for Fox's appearance in Smash Bros. And Smash Bros. Melee. A secondary inspiration for this theory is science. Now, I am a scientist in the sense that I have a degree in sociology, but that is woefully different than explaining G-forces to everyone in a detailed and super accurate way. So I'm going to explain it in a very simple and amateurish way. If you are actually an aerospace physiologist or something similar, please feel free to give a better explanation in the comments. This is one of those subjects that I understand in like a clumsy and rudimentary way, but verbalizing my understanding of it I've found to be kind of difficult, so we're just gonna try our best. According to the Webster Merriam Dictionary, G-force is the force of gravity or acceleration on a body. According to the very amateurish Amalia Solaris Dictionary, G-force stands for gravitational force. If you've ever flown in a plane, you probably noticed on takeoff it feels like you are being pushed back into your chair. That is you experiencing a high G-force than normal on Earth's surface, which is 1G, with the G being the unit of measurement for G-forces. I really don't have the mental bandwidth to go into how weight is dependent on gravity. Hopefully that is a concept you're at least kind of familiar with. Basically, when G's go up, you experience a force against your body, like when a plane takes off or like when you ride a roller coaster. The way that G's work is that it is a 1-to-1 ratio of your weight. 1G is the normal weight you are used to, 2Gs is double your normal weight. This will make sense in a second. I am so not qualified for this, oh my gosh, but we're doing our best. So let's take my mascot Creature here. Creature is roughly 5 pounds. If Creature is walking around on Earth's surface, he is experiencing 1G, which means he is experiencing those 5 pounds. Let's say Creature goes to an amusement park, Wacky Waldo's Funtime Wowzaland or something, and goes on a roller coaster that goes up to 3G. At 2G, he would be experiencing a force that is effectively the weight of 10 pounds. At 3G, he would be experiencing a force pressure that is 15 pounds. There are a variety of occupations that deal with G-forces, but the one that's pertinent for today's video are fighter pilots, who have to do high-speed maneuvers in planes and are thus exposed to higher G-forces, sometimes up to 9G. G-forces are how we compare strong acceleration to the normal 1G we would normally be experiencing. There are different types of G-forces, such as positive and negative ones, but I don't really think we need to go into all of that today. It's just important to understand what G-forces do. Our bodies are not used to enduring high G-forces for extended periods of time. So if we're in a setting where there are high G-forces, we have to do things to ensure people's safety. Because yes, high G-forces can cause a lot of harm, especially unmitigated. People experiencing extremely high G-forces can experience things like blacking out or total loss of consciousness, or they can even die. This is called G-LOC, which stands for G-force induced loss of consciousness. And again, this happens when blood is drained from the brain, which causes hypoxia, which if you don't know what that means, it means that something is not getting the oxygen that it needs to get. In this case, it would be a person's brain. I found this example on science.howstuffworks.com, and I thought it showcased the potential dangers of higher G-forces pretty well. On April 29th, 2001, CART officials canceled a race at the Texas Motor Speedway because the drivers experienced dizziness after as few as 10 laps. The combination of high speeds and tight turns at the Texas Motor Speedway can produce forces of almost 5G in the turns. At 5G, a driver experiences a force equal to 5 times their weight. For instance, during a 5G turn, there are 60 to 70 pounds of force pulling the driver's head to the side. There are ways to mitigate the damage caused by G-forces, but even then, enduring high G-forces for a sustained time can be potentially lethal. Fighter pilots deal with G-forces a lot, and some of the ways they prepare to deal with them are by doing things like training exercises in high G-force environments or wearing G-suits, which constrict the body in various ways to prevent blood from just rushing around as much. So now that I've explained all of this probably really badly, let's talk about why all of this matters to the metal leg theory. While piloting their R-Wings, the Star Fox team is going to have to deal with high G-forces. As we established, the team looks like they potentially have robotic legs in Star Fox for the Super Nintendo and Star Fox 64. The theory goes that the Star Fox team each had their legs amputated below the knee to combat G-forces causing blood to rush to their extremities. The idea is that because they don't have organic legs, the blood can't rush as far, so it helps mitigates things like lightheadedness, blacking out, and death, and all those other horrible things that can happen. One might be tempted to go, okay, wow, that's very dark. And yeah, it is. But also don't forget that this is the era of Nintendo that gave you things like this and this. So like, yeah, it's dark and shocking, but given that Nintendo was making such dark and shocking things already, it's not exactly out of the question. One might also be tempted to ask, okay, but like, how did the theory get to this point? How did we get to something so drastic as an answer? Is there any precedent for this even existing? And that is where things get really interesting, actually. After doing extensive research, I believe that the metal leg theory was inspired by a real-life person. In World War II, there was an ace pilot by the name of Group Captain Sir Douglas Bader, who was a part of the Royal Air Force. Bader lost the lower part of both of his legs in 1931 in an air crash and had prosthetic legs that he used to pilot his plane in World War II. He was described as a very spirited and stubborn individual who had a dream and wanted to pursue it no matter what. Like I said previously, he was considered an ace pilot with an impressive list of victories and accomplishments during his time in the RAF. A lot of people credit his success to not just his skill as a pilot, but because being a double amputee potentially gave him an advantage on the battlefield. Without the lower parts of his legs, the blood was not rushing as far from his brain, and so he could simply withstand G-forces better than his opponents. Douglas Bader's story is incredibly fascinating, and I did find myself falling down the research rabbit hole quite a bit as I was reading about him. There is something, though, that I noticed about this claim, but we're going to get into that a little bit later. When I researched the metal leg theory, I was unable to pinpoint an exact place or person that it originated from. This could be for a variety of reasons. It's a really old theory, and a lot of websites have closed down over the course of the last few decades. So, it's entirely possible that the origin point is somewhere only Wayback Machine can maybe find, and it's just very buried and fossilized. During all of my digging, I found evidence of it going as far back as January 2012. Nintendo Everything published an article about it with the author thanking a mysterious person named Jake for the tip. No idea who Jake is or was, but it seems like perhaps they submitted this theory to Nintendo Everything. That's what I assume, at least. As someone who has been on the internet for much longer than that, I'm fairly certain I recall seeing it even earlier on various gaming forums in particular. I was pretty active in the Star Fox fanbase in the early 2000s, particularly around when Adventures and Assault were released, and I feel like I recall seeing the theory floating around back then. But that was a long time ago, and my memory is a little bit hazy, so take that with a grain of salt. Regardless of how long the metal leg theory has been around, 2012 is, from what I can tell, when it began to take off in popularity. The channel responsible for this was Did You Know Gaming, which published a video on Star Fox in August 2012. This video has, as of late 2025, reached 2.4 million views. The metal leg theory did feature in part of this video, but it should be noted that they did call it a theory, not a fact. A few years later, in May 2015, MatPat at Game Theory also published a video about this metal leg theory. He even cited the story of Douglas Bader and explained how, theoretically, prosthetic legs could help the Star Fox team withstand G-forces. Interestingly enough, however, while he ends up disagreeing with the idea of the legs being removed to withstand G-forces, he does still speculate that they have metal legs in order to run around quickly. So he just really presented an alternate version of this theory. But it should be noted that much like the other video by Did You Know Gaming, MatPat did also call this a theory in his video. This video sits at 5.7 million views 10 years later. There is no doubt in my mind that the metal leg theory existed far before these videos were made. But I do think that the existence of these videos introduced so many people to this theory. And really, who could blame either of them for making these videos? The theory itself seemingly had scientific backing, and the nature of it was dark and intriguing, especially when you consider that the theory was about a game that was perceived to be family-friendly. That almost made it more intriguing. It made for good video content, and at the time, there was nothing saying it wasn't real. People love their video game theories, especially ones that are kind of wild or a bit unnerving. I think that's why this one spread so much. Even if you didn't consider the metal legs theory to be true, it was just so well known that fans were referencing it a lot in their works. It was also a source of debate between fans for quite some time, and still kind of is in some places. It did spread though, and soon enough, many people seemed to think that it was a canon Star Fox fact. If I could add my own personal observations, I noticed that most Star Fox fans didn't really subscribe to the theory that much, but some did. And a lot of the people that were casual enjoyers of the series seemed to really latch onto it. That's just what I noticed over the years, though. While the theory was popular for being edgy, there was already some evidence that it wasn't really true. If you look at Star Fox Adventures, Star Fox Assault, or Star Fox Command, you can pretty easily see that the characters are wearing boots and don't have robotic legs. This would be the main evidence against the theory. Until 2016, that is, where there were a couple of interviews with Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Star Fox. So if you paid any attention at all to the opening of this video, you already know that I've said that the theory isn't true. It's debunked. But it's important to know why it's not true. Now, I could just skip ahead to the interviews from 2016, but it's more fun if I don't, and it's more fun if we tackle some other stuff first about the theory, because this does get kind of interesting. Let's talk about Douglas Bader again. In almost every single documentary or article you read about Bader, you will hear the theory about his double leg amputation giving him an advantage when it comes to withstanding G-forces. Sometimes it is listed as a fact, sometimes it is listed as speculation. But if you know me, you know that if I'm going to tell you something, I want the research to back up whatever I'm claiming. So I looked into this statement people had been saying about Sir Douglas Bader for over a century at the very least, and you're never going to guess what I found. Zip, zilch, nothing. I cannot find any evidence that any sort of study was ever made on this theory. And I'm not talking about the metal leg theory. I'm talking about the entire concept of prosthetic legs actually giving anybody an advantage when it comes to G-forces. I cannot find any studies. I'm not sure this even has been studied. I searched for over a week. This was actually the part of the research process that took the longest by far. This theory about Bader being a double amputee helping him withstand G-forces does not actually appear to be technically proven. All of the sources I could find link back to a now defunct Douglas Bader Foundation website. Despite my best efforts to locate the site through various internet archives, it seems that it was not archived. Thankfully, MatPat included the quote in question about this subject in his own video, so I was able to see it there, but all I could really glean from what I could see was that it was all speculation. When I set out to revise how I do videos on this channel, I was pretty adamant in that with any big, bold statement I made, I would show you guys how I came to that conclusion or provide the sources. I always link my sources in the description of every video. With that being said, I have no source to link that Bader being a double amputee actually benefited him in any way as a pilot. So I can't really come on here and look at you in the eye through my computer screen and be like, yeah, this is scientifically proven. So take that as you will, I guess. So if this is all unproven science, that means that the metal leg theory is based off of a theory that seems to be based off of anecdotal evidence. But what's really funny is something I realized after spending about a week staring at articles and watching documentaries about Douglas Bader. I fell down the rabbit hole of trying to find scientific proof that the metal leg theory was even feasible, and I lost the plot a bit. But one day, during all of my research, I realized even if there was real-life evidence of this working, it didn't really matter in the context of Star Fox. Probably, at least. Star Fox 64 is a very quotable game. Do a barrel roll, am I right? But there is a piece of dialogue that is kind of easily missed if you're impatient and you don't want to sit through the opening cutscene on the first planet, the planet of Corneria. Most people probably have seen this dialogue at some point, but probably skip it more often than not these days. But funnily enough, it kind of addresses the subject of how the Star Fox team handles G-forces.
Check your G-diffuser system.
So, yeah. That line was just kind of there the whole time. But I get the feeling that not a lot of people really thought about it. In fact, I think I know not a lot of people thought about it because when I was going through pages upon pages of people debating this over the last decade, I barely saw this subject get brought up at all. And before anyone asks, yes, I did check the Japanese dub. This line also exists in that version as well. I had it translated by some friends. According to this blueprint of the R-Wing from the Star Fox for the Super Nintendo, it is located in this part of the ship. And yes, you did hear that right. This is the first iteration of the R-Wing from the 1993 game. G-diffusers were in this version too. And according to the official Nintendo Power Player's Guide for Star Fox 64, the R-Wing's revolutionary G-diffuser system generates a force field that protects the ship from enemy fire and from the stresses of high-speed aerobatics. Okay, I know during the entirety of this video I've sounded like a nerd, but I'm about to really sound like a nerd, so bear with me. The G-diffuser system is actually a super big Star Fox series lore point that I feel gets missed a lot when people talk about this franchise. While the Star Fox team is a team of very skilled pilots, the R-Wings they pilot are considered to be extremely high-tech even within their universe. They are the best ships in the entire Lilat system at the time of Star Fox 64. Although Andros does get the Wolfen 2s created in response to the R-Wings. We joke about how the Cornerian army must suck if the Star Fox team is what is needed to win the war against Venom, but in defense of the Cornerian army, it's not really that they suck, it's just that R-Wings are so well equipped that it's no wonder that the Star Fox team just kind of shows up and wins fights. The R-Wings boast, according to the official Nintendo Power Guide, a state-of-the-art G-diffuser system. This would allow them to pull off a lot of maneuvers that the average pilot in the average ship could not pull off. The R-Wings are elite ships equipped with elite technology, of which there is seemingly no real-life counterpart. But I mean, that's sci-fi for ya. As a longtime D&D dungeon master, I am no stranger to rules lawyering and reading the fine print. The description of the G-diffuser system says that it protects from the stresses of high-speed aerobatics. It doesn't say that it negates G-forces entirely. However, I would argue that it very likely greatly mitigates the effects of G-forces. And if it does that, then one would have to ask why there would even be a need to amputate one's legs in order to pilot the R-Wing. I'm not even sure there would be a need, honestly. So really, the game effectively resolves the theory itself. Probably. But say you're not satisfied with that. Say you're looking at this evidence going, okay, yeah, I see what you mean, but are you sure this totally proves that the metal leg theory isn't true? Let's talk about June 2015, when Star Fox Zero was announced. Back in this era of gaming, Nintendo was pretty present at a lot of massive gaming events, such as E3. In 2015, they formally unveiled Star Fox Zero, the first Star Fox game since the oh-so-controversial Star Fox Command from 2006. 2006 is not a year. 2006. Star Fox Zero is also the last game to be released for the series, unless you count Star Fox 2 finally getting released in 2017, or Starlink Battle for Atlas, which is not really a Star Fox game, but a lot of people bought it for the Star Fox content. When Star Fox Zero was announced, people were apprehensive about playing through a remake of a game that also had been remastered, but there was some level of hype for the game. During the following year, Shigeru Miyamoto ended up being interviewed by two content creators, MatPat and also the J-Wits. Both creators ended up asking Miyamoto about the leg theory. Miyamoto gave pretty similar answers in both interviews, so I'm only going to be showing what he said during the MatPat interview. Both interviews will be linked below in the description. So I've actually been asked this question before a fair bit recently, but it's funny because when we were first working on the game, really all we were looking at was really how do we take these animal characters and make them seem more human? We designed them in a way that made them feel sort of the most human. At the time, we actually didn't know anything about the problems that pilots can have with blood clots. The thing I always worry about more than his legs is what's happening with his tail. Additionally, Dylan Cuthbert, a programmer for the original Star Fox and Star Fox 2, as well as the director of Star Fox Command and Star Fox 64 3D, also had some things to say about this theory while streaming himself playing Star Fox Zero. In a now unlisted livestream, Cuthbert said the following: "Of course it's not true. What the hell is that? They're just boots. They're just metal boots. People have the weirdest imagination." Which I think kind of speaks for itself.
They were fake?
Of course they were fake!
So that just kind of seals the deal, I think. It's not canon. It never was. It was just an aesthetic choice. They wanted to make the characters look more human, and they went with metal boots. And it matches the sci-fi aesthetic too. Like, I see how this happened. Is it the most exciting answer? Not really, if I'm totally honest. But that's what the people who worked on the games have to say about it. So there's that. The metal legs theory was always a fan theory. And while some people are quick to point fingers at these two videos for causing the theory to be taken as canon, as I said earlier, there are points in both of these videos that call this theory just a theory. A game theory, even. Yeah, it was a low-hanging joke. So where did people get this idea that the theory was real? Well, the answer is, I don't know for sure. But I have a pretty educated guess. What I believe happened is this. The metal leg theory floated around the internet for a bit in more obscure niche areas. Popular video game YouTubers made videos about the theory, which raised awareness to it. People talked about it because the idea was so shocking and fascinating. Much like the game Telephone, as people talked about the theory, over time, the idea of it being a theory was dropped. People began referring to it as actually being a part of the lore. While the videos about Miyamoto and Cuthbert disproving the theory were made, they did not reach the levels of popularity that the initial videos about the theory did. The result is that people saw the initial videos or otherwise heard about the theory, but never encountered the part where the theory was disproven formally. Now, we still have people who think that Star Fox has metal legs. Here's the thing though. I can't really blame people for still believing the theory because, I mean, let's be honest. Most people are not keeping up with every single video game theory out there. And while I adore my space furry games, they are niche. And not everyone digs into them in the very normal way that I do. And that is okay. So yeah, there's no real wonder that there are people out there who think this is real. Even during my research for this video, I ran into several people talking about this theory as if it was canon, and even saw a video or two from other content creators referencing this theory in their own videos, again, as though it were true. And these were not old videos, these were videos that had been made in the last 5 years. While the theory does get refuted almost every single time it's brought up in more recent years, it's still amazing to see how much it does get brought up as soon as someone mentions Star Fox on the internet. Someone either talks about the team amputating their legs or about how the series is dead. As a fan, it's tiring. And it's why this video exists. There is a problem with the metal leg theory, and it actually has nothing to do with the unchecked science behind it or the G-diffuser lore being kind of shoved off to the side. It actually has nothing to do with the theory itself at all. It has to do with how people treated the theory. This theory being perpetuated as a fact is a problem because that is misinformation. I don't think people pushed this theory so much out of malice or anything like that. I legitimately think that this happened because it was just a massive slow burn of misunderstandings for a very, very long while. But that's why this video exists. Because I got tired of it. There's actually a second reason this video exists, but we'll get to that in a second. I'm about to hit you with the plot twist. I actually think that the misinformation surrounding the theory is the only real problem that the theory has, and this is why. While I have spent the last half hour or more of my time explaining everything I know about this theory and how it could possibly be true, as well as how it could possibly be untrue and how it got debunked, generally speaking, I actually despise the idea of nitpicking theories to death. I think doing so is kind of unfun, and sometimes can demand a lot from somebody. Like really, looking at the metal leg theory, that has to do with astrophysiology. Are we just going to expect every single person to have a PhD in that in order to make a theory about a video game from the 1990s? You shouldn't need a degree to have fun, especially when it comes to making theories about silly fictional space furries. Don't get me wrong, I like analyzing theories, but I don't like nitpicking, as I feel like that goes against the spirit of what this is all about. Theory crafting is for having fun. Fandom spaces are for having fun. We shouldn't shame people if they get something mildly incorrect, and we should encourage creativity wherever we can. Especially in smaller fandoms where the original creator has put the franchise on hiatus. Fandom creativity is what keeps the spark going in those situations, and I'm sad to say that there are so many times I see these smaller fandoms eating each other alive over tiny little things like someone getting a single detail wrong with their theory, or someone just making something that goes against the grain. Like, sure, maybe there's no scientific proof that I could find about the prosthetic legs actually being helpful with G-forces, but genuinely, what does it hurt if someone else likes that theory and wants to make art about it? The only time that theory crafting is really bad is when someone makes a theory and decides that everyone else needs to follow that theory. I said what I said. You might be wondering though, since I hate nitpicking theories so much, why did I do that to this one? Well, there's definitely a reason for it. The reason is neurodivergency. Historically, I feel like there's not enough deep dives about this subject. If this theory is brought up at all in other videos, it's usually a more surface level explanation or it's referenced in a meme. There's nothing really wrong with that, mind you, but I think it also merited a deep dive. There was a lot of misinformation about this theory, and I thought that maybe a video like this would help clear things up. I'm not going to sit here and claim to be the person who did the best or deepest dive into the theory, but I wanted to do what I could in order to compile what I found because it felt like the subject just needed more compiling and documentation. So while I hate being the fun police and nitpicking theories to death, I realized that if I wanted to see the meta leg theory be discussed thoroughly, then I was just gonna have to do it myself. From a nerdy academic level, it was pretty fun, but I do worry people will miss the point of the video, which is that the problem was never really the theory itself, but the misinformation around it. If I see anyone using this video as a reason to dunk on people having fun with theory crafting, or just dunk on people enjoying this theory, I will make freaking lose it. I think that fan theories existing at all is neat. Theory crafting is a form of creativity and a good mental exercise. I think it also provides tools for fans to play with as they create and explore, and that is cool. I could really go on about that for a while, but maybe we'll save that for another time if you are down to hear a very tired dragon yap about that kind of thing. This video ended up way longer than I thought it would. I did know it was going to be a long one judging by how long the script was, but man, it turned out super long. I had a lot to say. I hope you enjoyed it. Nonetheless, I will be sure to include all of my references and sources in the description like always. Please have a good rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.